Hello, future behavior analysts. Welcome to this exciting exploration of verbal behavior. Today, we're diving into verbal behavior, a cornerstone concept that shapes how we understand and interact with the world around us. It's a concept at the heart of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, and it's essential for anyone working in this field to grasp its nuances. Now, in ABA, the term verbal means more than just talking. It goes beyond the spoken word. It's any behavior that is reinforced through the actions of another person. Think of it as a social exchange where one person's behavior influences another's. This includes speaking, of course. Verbal communication is a primary example, but it also encompasses signing, a visual form of language, and writing, another way to express ourselves and communicate ideas. Even gesturing, using our bodies to convey meaning, falls under the umbrella of verbal behavior. Or using pictures, like with PECS, Picture Exchange Communication System, to communicate wants and needs. The focus is always on function, on what the behavior achieves. The key question is, what does the communication do for the speaker? What purpose does it serve? What need does it fulfill? The renowned psychologist B.F. Skinner gave us a comprehensive framework. This framework allows us to analyze language not as some abstract entity, but as a form of behavior, something observable and measurable. We move beyond simply looking at words or thoughts in isolation. Instead, he urged us to look at what happens immediately before and after a behavior occurs. These are the antecedents, the events that precede the behavior, and the consequences, the events that follow. This powerful approach helps us teach communication skills to individuals who struggle with them. This includes children with autism spectrum disorder, who may face unique challenges in developing communication skills, and also adults who are recovering from strokes or other conditions that affect their ability to communicate effectively. For example, consider a baby who cries and as a result gets a bottle from their caregiver, or a student who points to a cookie and immediately receives it as a reward. Both of these scenarios are examples of verbal behaviors in action. This is because another person, the caregiver or the teacher, mediates the reinforcement, providing the desired outcome. Even typing a simple question like, "What time is it?" into a chat window and promptly getting a reply. This counts as verbal behavior, as the response is mediated by another person through the digital interface. The key to understanding verbal behavior is to fundamentally shift your thinking about language. Instead of focusing solely on what does language look like, its structure, grammar, and vocabulary, we need to ask, what does language do? What function does it serve in the individual's life? Over the course of this module, we'll break down Skinner's core ideas in detail. We'll explore the main types of verbal behavior, examining their unique characteristics and functions. These types are formally called verbal operants, and understanding them is crucial for effective intervention. We'll also see how these operants are used in real-life situations, providing practical examples and case studies. Remember, this isn't just about exam prep or memorizing definitions. It's fundamentally about understanding how to help people communicate more effectively and improve their quality of life. By the end of this module, you'll see language not as a fixed trait, but as a dynamic set of skills. Skills that you can actively teach, shape, and develop in others. So let's get started on this fascinating journey together. Let's dive into the science of communication and unlock the power of verbal behavior. In 1957, B.F. Skinner, a towering figure in the field of ABA, published a groundbreaking book. This book, Verbal Behavior, fundamentally changed how we understand and see language, shifting the focus from structural analysis to a functional perspective. He argued that language, rather than being an innate ability, is learned and shaped by the environment through interactions and experiences, just like any other behavior that is acquired through reinforcement and consequences. At the heart of this approach is the three-term contingency: antecedent, behavior, and consequence. Skinner posited that this framework applies to language too, providing a way to analyze and understand verbal behavior. In verbal behavior, the consequence, the reaction or response is always delivered by a listener, making the social context crucial. The antecedent, the event that precedes the behavior, could be hunger, seeing something that catches your eye, or being asked a question that prompts a verbal response. The behavior itself is the verbal response, whether it's spoken aloud, expressed through sign language, or communicated in written form. The consequence is what happens next. It could be getting what you want, receiving praise for your communication, or obtaining valuable information. For example, consider a scenario where a child sees a cookie, and then says cookie when they see one, and as a result, gets the cookie from a parent who understands their request. The parent's action of providing the cookie is the reinforcement, strengthening the child's association between the word and the desired object. This mediation by a listener, the parent in this case, is what fundamentally makes the behavior verbal, as it relies on social interaction. Skinner's approach lets us classify language not just by its form or structure, but by its function, by what it achieves in a given context. These categories, defined by their function, are called verbal operants, including Mands, which are requests, tacts, which are labels or descriptions, and echoics, which are imitative verbal responses. By understanding the specific environmental variables that control each type of verbal operant, we can teach language skills more effectively and efficiently. It's not solely about memorizing words in isolation, but about understanding how to use language functionally in real-world situations to achieve desired outcomes. Skinner gave us a roadmap, a systematic framework, for building communication skills from the ground up, focusing on the purpose and effect of language. The Mand is the first type of language most of us learn. It's the foundation upon which more complex communication skills are built. Think about it. From our earliest days, we're driven by needs and desires, and learning to express those is crucial. It's a request, a demand, a way of getting what we need or want from the world around us. It's the power of communication in its simplest, most direct form. Mands are controlled by motivation. Without that internal drive, the request simply wouldn't happen. It's the engine that powers the communication. Hunger, the primal need for sustenance. Thirst, the body's signal that it needs hydration. Discomfort, the feeling that something isn't right and needs to be changed. Or desire, that yearning for something that we don't yet possess. It could be a tangible object or something more abstract. When a child says water because they're thirsty, driven by that internal need to quench their thirst, that's a Mand. A clear, direct request motivated by a specific need. The reinforcer is getting the water, the satisfaction of having that need met, which then reinforces the behavior of asking. The antecedent is the motivation, that feeling of thirst that sparked the whole process. The behavior is the request itself, the act of saying water. And the consequence is receiving what was asked for, the quenching, refreshing water. Mands can be spoken using words to clearly articulate our needs. Signed using the visual language of gestures and symbols, or even gestures, a simple point or reach can be a powerful Mand. Teaching Mands is often the first step in language programs, providing a foundation for more complex communication. Especially for early learners or those with communication challenges, it's a way to give them a voice and empower them to express their needs. For example, a student says help when stuck, signaling their need for assistance, or turn on the light when it's dark, requesting a change in their environment. Each is a Mand tied to a specific need, a direct link between motivation and communication. Learning to Mand gives people control over their environment, allowing them to shape their surroundings to meet their needs, and reduces frustration by providing a clear and effective way to communicate those needs. It can also decrease challenging behaviors, like tantrums, which often stem from an inability to communicate needs effectively. By providing a way to ask for breaks or help, it empowers individuals to manage their own needs and avoid escalation. For your exam, remember, Mands are controlled by motivation and result in a specific reinforcer. It's a fundamental principle of behavior. They're the language of I want, the driving force behind much of our communication. Fundamental to human interaction, shaping our relationships and our ability to navigate the world around us. Next up is the tact. Think contact with the environment. A tact is labeling or commenting on things you see, hear, smell, or feel. The antecedent is a nonverbal stimulus, like seeing a dog or hearing rain. The behavior is naming it, and the consequence is social reinforcement, praise, smiles, or acknowledgement. Unlike Mands, tacts aren't about getting something, they're about sharing information. For example, a child says dog when they see one, or it's raining when looking outside. Tacting builds conversational skills and helps us share experiences. A rich tact repertoire means being able to label not just objects but actions, features, and more. For your exam, tacts are controlled by nonverbal stimuli and maintained by social reinforcement. Let's finish the primary verbal operants with echoics and intraverbals. Echoic. This is verbal imitation, repeating what someone else says. The antecedent is a verbal stimulus, The behavior is repeating it, and the consequence is usually praise. Echoics are crucial for learning new words and sounds, especially in early language development. For example, a parent says mama, and the child repeats mama. Strong echoic skills make it easier to teach other types of language. Intraverbal. This is responding to someone's words with related but not identical words. It's the basis of conversation, like answering questions or filling in blanks. If someone says, twinkle, twinkle, little, and you say star, that's an intraverbal. The antecedent is a verbal stimulus, but the response is different and related. Intraverbals are maintained by social reinforcement and keep conversations flowing. Weak intraverbal skills make back-and-forth conversation difficult. For your exam, echoics are imitation. Intraverbals are responses to other verbal behavior, but not imitations. Verbal behavior isn't just about the speaker. The listener is just as important. The listener mediates reinforcement, making the speaker's words meaningful. Listener behavior includes following instructions and responding appropriately. For example, when a teacher says, sit down, and students sit, that's listener behavior. Listener skills are critical for safety, group participation, and learning. Assessments look at both speaker and listener abilities, since they develop together. In conversation, we constantly switch roles between speaker and listener. Understanding both sides is key to effective communication. For your exam, the listener mediates reinforcement and responds to the speaker's verbal behavior. Now let's touch on the autoclitic, a more advanced but fascinating concept. Autoclitics are verbal behaviors about other verbal behaviors. They add nuance, structure, or clarify meaning. For example, saying, I think it's a cow instead of just cow, I think is the autoclitic, showing uncertainty. Autoclitics can be words like not, really, or even sentence structure and punctuation. They help the listener interpret the speaker's intent, certainty, or emphasis. You don't need to master every detail for your exam, but know that autoclitics modify primary verbal operants and add complexity to language. They make communication richer and more precise. How do we use all this in practice? By assessing and teaching language based on function. Analysts don't just count words, they assess Mands, tacts, echoics, and intraverbals. Tools like the VB map break language into these operants to pinpoint strengths and weaknesses. If a child can label but not request, teaching starts with Mands. Interventions use prompting, fading, and reinforcement to build skills step by step. This approach teaches language as it's actually used, not just memorized. For your exam, Skinner's analysis is a practical guide for assessing and teaching real communication. When verbal behavior is lost like an aphasia after a stroke, the impact is profound. Losing the ability to man means not being able to ask for help or express needs, leading to frustration and loss of independence. Losing tacts means not being able to label or share experiences, causing social isolation. Losing intraverbals makes conversation nearly impossible, cutting off social connection. By analyzing which operants are affected, therapists can target interventions, rebuilding Mands, tacts, and intraverbals to restore communication. Understanding verbal behavior helps us give people back their voice and connection to others. And that's a wrap on verbal behavior. Remember, words are more than just noise. They're behaviors shaped by consequences, just like everything else in ABA. If this helped clarify the Mands, tacts, and all the other verbal operants, please like this video, comment with your favorite Skinner quote, and subscribe to ChapterCast so studying always sounds this easy. See you next chapter!